Elf and Inkmoth Nexus, all the staples you know from modern burn, but facilitated by much more powerful burn spells, especially Invigorate and Berserk. Sperling is actually playing a main deck copy of actual factual giant growth from Alpha. This deck can also win from a base of no cards in play, as it can crop rotate for Inkmoth Nexus at the end of the turn and then go off from there.
Yeah, Matt Sperling definitely the beatdown in this matchup. He wants to get the game over quickly. Vidi wants to disrupt Matt Sperling any way that he can.
So Vidi starting off the action with a Deathrite Shaman, off an Underground Sea, and a Polluted Delta. Matt with a Noble Hierarch and draws Inkmoth Nexus.
Noble Hierarch, the one non-infect creature in Matt's deck. Noble Hierarch serves as mana acceleration and is a pump spell. It's kind of a dual purpose here.
And the rough thing for Vidi in this matchup is that a lot of his removal spells, Liliana the Veil and Abrupt Decay especially, provide no resistance against Inkmoth Nexus.
Yeah, the Inkmoth Nexus is going to be Matt Sperling's most reliable source of damage. He does have this Blighted Agent in play, but Vidi's deck full of answers to that. He has 2 Disfigure, the 3 Abrupt Decay, and I said full of, actually just 6 answers total, one of which is a Liliana of the Veil, which is going to require some hoops to jump through to actually kill that.
So Vidi's brainstorming here at the end of Matt's turn after Matt played Blighted Agent. He attempts to sacrifice his Blue Delta to shuffle away with the Brainstorm, and Matt comes prepared with Stifle. That is a singleton in the main deck.
Matt's deck full of one-ofs and spice.
Yeah, this Tom Ross's build of this deck also had a bunch of one-ofs. He actually was playing 1 copy of Nature's Claim in the main deck. Matt has removed that for what appears to be Giant Growth.
Giant Growth, it seems like a better fit in the Infect deck. It's at least more on theme. So Vidi did not get to shuffle his deck, which might leave him a little stifled, so to speak. He does have another fetch land, so he only gets to shuffle away 1 of the 2 cards he put back with Brainstorm.
And you can see that right now Vidi is armed with True Name Nemesis, but as powerful as that card is, if he casts it here, he might simply die.
Yeah, that is one of the strengths of an Infect deck in a format like this. Infect is basically getting to play unfair here. One of the hurdles that people have to deal with in Legacy is getting around True Name Nemesis either by answering it or not caring. Here, Matt gets to not care.
Yeah, True Name Nemesis in concert with equipment can be quite powerful, but on its own, not providing very much.
So Vidi is going to, he has to win. You know, he has to get a clock in play somehow. So Vidi wants to get that True Name into play, but he would rather leave up mana to represent a trick at least.
So Vidi does not go with True Name Nemesis, simply plays a 2nd copy of Deathrite Shaman and passes the turn back to Matt. And Matt will lead off the turn with a Brainstorm on his main phase, perhaps suspecting that a removal spell like Abrupt Decay could be in Vidi's hand.
We see Matt has a Force of Will in hand that could theoretically protect a creature from a removal spell. Unfortunately, it would not answer an Abrupt Decay.
So Matt trying to assemble lethal here. Looks like he's a little bit light on pump spells in hand.
Light on pump, plenty of Infect creatures to spare. The Glistener Elf, not so great against a board of 2 1/2s. That extra Blighted Agent, that's pretty solid though.
Yeah. Glistener Elf, another victim of Deathrite Shaman's 2nd point of toughness. Alongside Goblin Lackey, basically every elf.
Yeah.
A laundry list.
The front side of Delver of Secrets.
Yep.
So Matt does not have a pump spell in hand, it looks like.
So he's going to attack with Blade Agent, trigger Exalted. We'll see if Vidi has a removal spell here.
Attempts to add some mana, successfully does, and shows Abrupt Decay.
And of course cannot Force of Will that, as it is uncounterable, and has a follow-up copy of Blade Agent.
Yeah, Matt Sperling sitting with a hand full of counter magic. But unfortunately, just the 1 additional threat to continue to apply pressure.
Vidi draws what I believe to be Liliana of the Veil.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, Liliana not so hot against the Noble Hierarch, which at this point has done its job. Should Matt, if Vidi were to play Liliana and down tick it immediately, I don't think Matt minds giving up that Noble Hierarch at all. He might actually also just simply give up the Manland.
Also, for those of you who have never watched Vidi in the Legacy portion, get ready for a lot of Asian foils and black border duels, as he is very passionate about his Magic collection.
For sure. That's been a hallmark of this entire tournament that I've seen. There are a lot of the legacy locals with really busted collections.
Yeah, Los Angeles has an awesome legacy scene.
Vidi in the tank.
There's only one more land in both graveyards, so he's being very thoughtful about this Death Right activation, as this may be the last mana it makes for a while. And Vidi goes with Liliana of the Veil, and Matt with Daze.
As you mentioned, that untapped Death Right Shaman cannot make mana.
And Daze successfully resolves.
So Vidi left with, I believe, just a True Name Nemesis. We didn't actually see the card he drew for the turn.
Is an Underground Sea.
Ah.
Ooh. I guess he was not suspecting Daze would be at the ready there for Matt. Plays the land post-combat and passes the turn back.
So Matt has a free window to attack for 2. Unfortunately, cannot bolster the power of that Blighted Agent. He may go digging, and it looks like that's what he's going to do.
Yeah, starts off the turn with a Brainstorm. He looks loath to use that Windswept Heath if he can avoid it, because that gives Vidi additional mana.
So finds that Glistener Elf, which again is not going to be so hot a threat against the 1/2 walls, and is going to shuffle it away, as well as it looked like an additional piece of counter magic.
So it puts back Tropical Island and Glistener Elf, and Sperling keeps Tropical Island.
I'm guessing he is considering if he wants to ponder now and use the ponder to shuffle, or to shuffle and then ponder.
Yep, so he decides to crack the Windswept Heath, finds a Trop.
So Matt is looking for basically anything to pump his Blighted Agent. He's looking for the 1 of Giant Growth, the 4 Invigorates, and that actually looks to be it. He has the 1 Berserk. Berserk would not be a strong spell on its own here.
But if he was able to find something in tandem with Invigorate, then that could actually be lethal this turn.
Yeah, one of the perks of playing Infect, you can definitely just win out of nowhere.
So Matt brainstorms after shuffling, finds a Glistener Elf,
and
a Forest, and
I can't tell. It's that card behind the Tropical Island, but
yeah. Another green spell. Can probably safely assume it's some sort of pump spell.
Maybe it's the Giant Growth. We don't know what edition his Giant Growth is.
I would suspect that if Sperling was going to Giant Growth, he would get the beta one. He's that kind of guy.
Fair enough. And just swings for 2.
Sends in with Blighted Agent, announces the Exalted trigger. Vidianto goes up to 2 poison.
And he's going to pass the turn with access to a Force of Will for whatever Vidi has up his sleeve.
Well, I think he still might be contemplating whether or not he wants to ponder this turn.
Okay.
Oh, he has Berserk in hand.
Oh, that is the From the Vault
Yeah,
Berserk?
that's from the Vault Berserk.
Okay. From the Vault Exiled, I believe.
Yeah.
This Berserk, at one point, too powerful for tournament Magic.
Yeah. That was actually never true once, but people thought that was true once upon.
Sure.
So he's pondering now post-combat, looks at Glistener Elf 2 lands, it very quickly shuffles that away.
Yeah, that won't do.
Looking for a pump spell to pair with this Berserk to produce lethal next turn.
Now, and we're saying that Matt is looking for a pump spell, but he's not desperate for one. He's winning this race by a substantial margin, and he would not mind simply adding an additional threat, simply finding another Daze or another Force of Will. Which actually, this looks like what he found.
Found a copy of Crop Rotation there. There are obviously 4 copies of Nexus in Matt's deck, alongside 2 Pendle Havens and 1 Wasteland as Crop Rotation bullets.
So that Crop Rotation is actually a pump spell in some degree. He can attack with the Blighted Agent or with the Nexus, and then put the Noble Hierarch Exalted trigger on the stack, and then pump with Pendle Haven.
So Vidi draws and casts a copy of Hypnotorak that gets both Berserk and Crop Rotation out of Matt's hand, leaving him with just a Force of Will.
That was a solid him. That took out most likely of all the cards that Matt wanted to keep, I think Force of Will was 3rd on the list.
Yeah, and there's an Invigorate off the top, which would have actually produced lethal last turn.
Vidi dodging some bullets there, but still not in great shape.
So Matt attacks with Blade Agent again, announces his Exalted Trigger, knocking Vidi up to 4 poison.
And that puts Vidi on a 1-turn clock, although Vidi doesn't know that.
Yep. So Vidi activates Deathrite Shaman at the end of the turn, exiling a spell out of Matt's graveyard.
Does he find an answer? And in fact, just an answer to the Blighted Agent won't do.
His true name Nemesis, and there are no lands in either player's graveyard here, so those Deathrites are simply 1/2s and provide no defense. Matt draws, he draws a Ponder. That's a blue card to pair for this Force of Will, just with any insurance. Alternate cost Invigorate, and that is exactly 10, and Matt fairly quickly up a game here.
So a Vidi sideboard is a Vidi special. Vidi sideboard is 13 one-ofs and 2 Golgari Charms.
Okay.
So those 2 Golgari Charms, he definitely wants those. He also has access to Force of Will, Flusterstorm. Those aren't blank, but I don't particularly like them. Abrupt Decay, again, Matt has some good targets, but some targets that Abrupt Decay cannot kill. So I think he wants it, but I'm not sure. He has access to a Croson Grip, which can answer the lands, the Inkmoth Nexus. And he has an Engineered Plague, actually looks like everything else in his board is more or less useless in the matchup.
Yeah, so there's the -1/-1 effects can be good against Matt sometimes, especially Engineered Plague, as it's something that stays in play. Things like Golgari Charm, Matt is able to play over the top of in certain spots, but an ongoing -1/-1 effect can provide some utility, and additional removal is good as well. On Matt's side, we have a Pithy Needle, a Dismember, a Swan Song, a Submerge, 3 Nature's Claims, a Misdirection, a Dispel, a Bojuka Bog, a Sylvan Library, 2 Viridian Corruptors, a Necropede, and a Relic of Progenitus. I think you're definitely going to see the Relic come in. It wouldn't surprise me to see the Bojuka Bog come in as well, as it's a reasonable crop rotation target against a deck producing both Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyf. I think you'll see the 1 copy of Submerge come in, and possibly the 1 copy of Dismember as well.
For sure. Yeah, this is a weird sideboard for Matt Sperling, because it mostly consists of disruptive spells. We're using cards to break up what Vidi is doing rather than protect what Matt is doing, which is not what I would expect out of an Infect sideboard. Then again, I've never built an Infect deck sideboard, so.
The thing that's really impressed me about the Infect deck, and maybe part of the reason for that kind of sideboard, is it is actually capable of playing a conventional game. We see the deck combo out a fair bit, but 6 of the 10 points of Infect that Sperling dealt in that game were simply because of a Blighted Angel assisted by a Noble Hierarch.
Sure.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be all in on its combo like something like Ad Nauseam or Sneak and Show has to be, because it can play something resembling a conventional game plan.
That's fair. Yeah, we refer to Infect as a combo deck, but it's really, it can almost play the role of aggro control. We saw him stick a clock and protect it. And post-board with cards like Submerge, he could actually stick a clock and then essentially milk his tricks in hand for time walks.
Yeah, and decks like Burn and Elves also have that element to them where they're doing their primary thing, but their backup plan can just be some creatures and some removal spells, and that comes up in a percentage of games as well.
Yeah, Elves fairly well known actually for just going on the beatdown plan with its pile of 1/1s. Blue-Green Infect, that's actually its primary plan, is to beat down with its 1/1s. But it can do that without the aid of any pump spells, as we saw. The Invigorate, it came off the top and sped things up, but Matt didn't necessarily need it.
Yeah, it's very reasonable that Matt would have just won that game 2 turns later by hitting with Blood Agent or Inkmoth Nexus 2 more times.
As we mentioned, even if Vidi had found an answer to the Blighted Agent, Matt Sperling had an Inkmoth Nexus at the ready. It just would have replaced it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Vidi needed running singular answers. I'm not sure in game 1 he actually had access to a card that could turn things around straight up without needing to answer both cards consecutively.
Yeah, Inkmoth Nexus is especially troubling for Vidi. So both of these players sit at 5-1. We're going to take a quick look at our leaderboard in this tournament, see which of the players that we're following are doing well. You see Paul Riesel and Jacob Corey at 6-0 right now. Matt Sperling 5-1. Jonathan Job 4-1-1. Jason Januszewicz, our standard open champion, we see him at 4-2. as we move to the next part of our standings here. Sam Party 4-2, Ricky Sitter, who lost to Matt Sperling last round, 4-2. Greg Mitchell, our Seattle Legacy Open champion, 4-2. Joe Lissette, 3-2-1, finally out of top 8 contention after starting off 0-1-1. And Greg Hatch, the dream is over. We had a great match on camera, but couldn't quite get it done at 3-3, though I assume still battling it out.
Yeah, that is a shame. Greg Hatch, we saw 3-3 there on the board. That's a virtual 3-2.
Yes, he did show up late for round 1. He was misinformed by the hotel lobby how long the convention center was from the hotel. I saw him come bounding into the convention center, still soaking wet from the shower he just took, claiming he was misinformed about how long the walk was, but took his loss and was really excited about playing the deck, and not the best afternoon for it, but his match on camera that we had in round 2, or round 3 rather, quite memorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was very excited to get him on camera. We actually, the round after that, we saw Jonathan Job on camera. And
yes.
So there are a lot of, I guess this is kind of just going to be a true statement about any Legacy Open, but there are a lot of really spicy decks in the room. Jonathan Job playing a food chain combo deck. We actually, I just got a deck tech recorded with him, so I would expect to see that at some point.
Yeah, I brought this up a couple times on the broadcast. I think Los Angeles is just America's best Legacy scene. The amount of interest on the local level, 60, 70, 80 person cash tournaments are not uncommon in the Los Angeles and Orange County area. There's a lot of people who specialize in the format, and Joe Lissette and Jacob Corey are near the top of the list in terms of people, at least from the Open Series, that you associate as being Legacy players, and you regularly see them travel to these events and do quite well in them.
For sure, yeah, and not just travel within the region, not just on the West Coast or even on the western side of the country. You see Vidi at East Coast events all the time. You see Joe Lissette fairly regularly, traveling all around. Yeah, these guys are hungry to game.
Yeah, the New Jersey Grand Prix in November, I assure you that Jacob Corey and almost certainly Joe Lissette will be out there.
Oh, yeah.
We get game 2 on array, Vidi on the play. And you can see, even with a strategy that has quite a bit of removal in it, as Bug Delver does, a deck you would assume would be very equipped to break up what Matt's doing, still quite challenging.
Sure, yeah, there's always the issue of matching your removal spells to the threats that Matt Sperling is going to present. As we mentioned, Abrupt Decay can't target lands. Liliana of the Veil not going to be effective if there's a Noble Hierarch in play. Disfigure on the wrong end of a combat trick on occasion. Afterboard, Vidi is going to be a little more prepared. He has kind of trumps in a sense, like Engineered Plague, but again, only a one of. Vidi's going to lead off with Delver of Secrets.
So a good opening. It's important for him to be clocking Matt here, as Matt, given all day, will be able to assemble hands that can go off over the top of whatever removal or disruption Vidi happens to have. Sure.
The hallmark of any Delver deck, we see the actual namesake Delver of Secrets, but just cheap clocks in general. Tarmogoyf, Deathrite Shaman, kind of a clock in its own right. And in game 1, Vidi did not get a chance to get a real clock established.
So Vidi misses on his Delver flip after Sperling simply plays a Tropical Island, passes. Vidi with an Underground Sea and a second copy of Delver of Secrets.
Often when you see turn 1 Delver, turn 2 Delver, you can expect a Brainstorm or a Ponder to set them up. I don't believe Vidi has access to that, so he's hoping to flip him blind here.
Yep. So Matt contemplating whether or not he wants to Brainstorm here at the end of Vidi's turn. You can see he has Inkmoth Nexus, Invigorate, and Berserk, so that is lethal. That is 10.
Yeah, that's 10 starting on turn 3. Now, if those Delvers flip, he's got to get through some blockers.
So Sperling does decide to Brainstorm, deciding that his mana is going to be a little bit tight here. Picks up a Noble Hierarch, an Inkmoth Nexus, and a Wooded Foothills off the Brainstorm.
What's he looking for when he casts a turn 1 Brainstorm? Force of Will, I guess?
I think the expectation is just that he's going to be going for a very early kill, and he may not have a mana left over for the rest of the game.
Fair, okay.
That would be my guess. I mean, he also needs to find a third land here, because if he's going to go with Invigorate plus Berserk on Inkmoth Nexus, that requires additional mana.
Sure. Okay, and that was, I guess, the missing piece.
Yeah.
Which he did find in the form of a Wooded Foothill.
And a turn 2 Inkmoth Nexus and a Blighted Agent.
So now Matt Sperling has lethal next turn, even through a flying blocker. Not that Vidi has any.
Yeah.
Vidi finds Wasteland. Now, Wasteland is an answer to Inkmoth Nexus.
But it's unclear if he's going to have an answer to both Nexus and Blighted Agent.
Vidi is not going to leave up Wasteland anyway. He's going to go for Engineered Plague. That's, as we mentioned, a bit of a trump. Although he has two choices. You know, he can either kill the Blighted Agent or the Nexus, and whichever one he doesn't kill is threatening lethal here.
Yeah. So we're going to find out what this Engineered Plague is about to name momentarily. Matt, with Daze in hand, deciding if he wants to actually fight over this.
And I would expect him to. I suppose. Well, actually, having said that, again, it doesn't actually matter which creature dies because the other one is still lethal. And Matt would actually like to keep that Daze to beat a potential Daze or Force of Will from Vidi.
Yeah. Sperling really mulling this one over.
Mm-hmm. It's something you see a lot in Legacy when games are kind of shortened, truncated, I suppose, because this game is only going to take 3 turns, and so every decision kind of becomes amplified in importance.
Yeah, so the Engineered Plague names Rogue, takes down the Blighted Angel, and now I suspect we're going to see Matt go for it with his Daze backup.
He almost looks like he would like an excuse not to, though.
Yep. So any Mod Nexus comes in, here's Invigorate. Does Invigorate resolve? If so, yes, that brings up to 5. There's Berserk, that's 10, and that's it. Get turn 3 kill through Engineer Plague. Matt Sperling, 2-0, moves on to 6-1. Top 8 hopes still alive. Vidianto Wijaya takes his 2nd loss and is now out of top 8 contention.
Yeah, that was brutal. Vidi, we saw him yesterday make it all the way to the semifinals. Mm-hmm. Vidi throwing burn at people's faces yesterday and this morning. Matt Sperling kind of throwing burn at people's faces today in his own way.
It's a different sort of style,
sure.
Yes, but the blue-green, in fact, I understand that it's definitely charming, but I think it may actually be an under-respected archetype. We had Tom Ross finish in the top 4 in Atlanta with this, really only succumbing to basically 21 mana pieces of interaction, and Umezawa's Jitte, well, that was finally what it took to stop this. But even Vidi, who you would probably classify as a reasonably prepared opponent, was never really competitive in these games.
No.